Good morning, everyone. Today our lecture is about the general features of nervous system and general features of sensory part of nervous system. What we are going to discuss today, we are going to discuss about the function of the nervous system, classification and characteristic of the nervous system departments, type of the neurons and their functional specialization, function of the neuroglia, interaction of processes of excitation and inhibition in the central nervous system, and type of central inhibition and their mechanism. Also, we're going to discuss about the mechanism of interaction of the neuron in the neuronal chain, refractory principle of the nervous system, concept about the reflex and reflex arc, type of the sense, the concept of the analyzer, somatosensory sense, the receptor and conductive part of the somatosensory analyzer, and nociceptive and anti-nociceptive system, physiological basis of the anesthesia. So let's start. What is the main function of the nervous system? The first and important main function is providing the perception of the sensory information. So it means that different kind of stimuli from the external world or internal stimuli are detected by the sensory part of the nervous system, by the receptors, and then they will send up to the central nervous system. The second point, it is integration of that sensory information which is received from that stimuli and processing it. As a result, due to the processing and integration of that information, the central nervous system will apply some kind of reaction to it and send it to the afferent nerves. Control of skeletal and smooth muscles and glands. Control of contraction of the skeletal and smooth muscles. Maintaining the homeostasis, the first function, main property function of nervous system. And the last one is ensuring the higher mental function like consciousness, mental activity, memory, and emotions. So here in this slide, you could see the anatomical classification of the nervous system. So the central nervous system consists of the brain and of the spinal cord, which is presented here, and the peripheral nervous systems mainly consist of the cranial nerves, 12 pairs of the cranial nerves, 31 pair of the spinal nerve. So this is that nerve system which goes out from the brain and spinal cord. Departments of the nervous system. So, central nervous system, as we told, it consists of the brain, spinal cord. Integrate the main function of it is integration and control of the centers. Peripheral nervous system, it consists of the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. The main function of it is a communication line between the central nervous system and the rest of the body. Peripheral nervous system is divided into types. It is a sensory or afferent division, which consist of the sensory or afferent fibers, which will collect information from the soma of the body, from the skeletal muscles, from the visceral organs, and conduct these impulses from the receptors to the central nervous system. And motor or efferent division, which mainly consists of the motor fibers, and it will conduct impulses from the central nervous system to the effector organs. It means to the muscles and the glands. Motor division is divided in two types. It's the somatic nervous system. Mainly, it will innervate the skeletal muscles and responsible for voluntary contraction. And autonomic nervous system, ANS. It will responsible for visceral motor. It means from the contraction of the visceral organs. Conduct impulses from the central nervous system to the visceral organs. It means to the smooth muscles, to the cardiac muscle, the glands. And autonomic nervous system is divided into two types: the sympathetic division and this parasympathetic division. Sympathetic division, mainly the highlight sentence for it, it is fight and flight response. Which mainly is responsible for stress period, and parasympathetic division, which the main function of it conserves energy, promotes a housekeeping function during the rest. So the opposite function to the sympathetic division. Now let us go on. Let us talk about the classification of the neurons. So the neurons, like the smallest and very important part of the nerve system, it consists of this. It has a cell body and it has a processor. There is a two type of processes. The long process will be called the axon, and the short one will be called dendrite. Neurons we could classify by morphology, by their structure. It could be multipolar neurons, which have a lot of dendrites and one axon. It could be bipolar neuron, which have the one dendrite and one axon. It could be unipolar or pseudo-unipolar neurons, which have one processes. Yes, you could see here, but it will divide it T-like division to the this one, to the dendrites and to the axon. And also we can divide neurons by their function. It could be afferent neuron or motor neuron. Mainly, the afferent neuron will have the structure of the multipolar neuron, one long axon, a lot of dendrites. Sensory neuron or afferent neuron, it has mainly structure of the unipolar neuron, which means has one axon, and like the sensory receptors, which will be goes from it, like. And interneurons. Interneurons could be anaxonic, it means without axons. They could be sometimes bipolar or multipolar. Main function of the afferent neurons is to transmit information from the central nervous system to the effector organs, which will be presented by the skeletal muscles or smooth muscles or glands. Afferent neurons or sensory neurons, their main function is to transmit the information from the receptors to the central nervous system, and the function of the interneurons is like the to some extent the connection. The first thing, the connection is like between the efferent and afferent neuron. It's like they have such function like a bridge. They make a bridge between these two type of neurons, or they connect afferent neuron with central nervous system, higher levels of nervous system, or vice versa, efferent neurons with central nervous system. So another type of cells which we are going to discuss is neuroglia. First of all, let us look this slide. When in this slide we could see the conversation between the neuron and the glia cell. And glia cells say, hey, why does anyone talk about me? And neuron will answer, you don't do anything, that's why. And glia cells say that's not true. Yes, it's not true. The glia cell play an important role in the central nervous system and in peripheral nervous system. It's type of supportive cell, but nevertheless they have very important function. First of all, let us look what kind of neuroglia we have. In central nervous system, we have four types of neuroglia. It's ependymal cells, it's oligodendrocytes, it's microglia, and astrocytes. In peripheral nervous system, we have two types, it's satellite cells and Schwann cells. Now let us discuss the function of this, some of the type of neuroglia. So let us talk about the microglia, which is a part of the, which is a glia cell in the central nervous system. The main function of it is a protective function. It absorbs the remains of destroyed cells. It's essential for eliminating clumps of amyloid beta and other proteins clusters which are associated with Alzheimer's disease. Microglia is also the type of immune cell. The main function of it is to absorb destroyed cells and protect the network of the neurons in the central nervous system from the clumps of proteins which could have a negative effect on the synapses and the networks of the neurons. So when we have the like amount of the when we have in central nervous system plaquettes of or clumps of proteins or amyloid beta, you could see here that it is a homeostasis. One neuron connects with another neuron, and between these two neurons will be located glia cells, microglia, oligodendrocytes, and astrocytes. But in a plaque deposition, but in a unhealthy condition, or in condition of pathophysiology condition, or in condition of disease, in our case it will be Alzheimer's disease, near the astrocytes, near the microglia and oligodendrocytes will be located amyloid beta. It's a specific type of proteins. So they will locate it, and as a result, they will have a harmful effect on the glia cells, and also they will have a harmful effect on the synapse of the neurons. So you could say that we'll receive the synapse elimination, decreased amount of synapses in the central nervous system. The main function of microglia is to destroy this amyloid beta. But sometimes it's rather they could not properly and absolutely do their function, because there will be a huge amount of these clamps of the amyloid beta, and as a result will appear a disease which is called Alzheimer's disease. What is the main clinical symptoms of Alzheimer's disease? Mainly this disease is related for older people. It's about 60 and more years old. What kind of problem? Due to the damages of the synapses, we will talk that in the central nervous system, the network of the synapses, the neuronal connection will be destroyed. So logically, that information which percepts central nervous system will not be appropriate. It will, to some extent, will have some dysfunction. That is why people will have difficulty with swallowing problems. They will have poor judgment. They will have problems with memory. It means that they will forget everything very quickly, mostly that events which happened now in their life. It means that they will very clearly remember everything which happened years ago, 20, 30 years ago, but it's difficult for them to remember something which happened 10 minutes or 1 day ago, or sometimes they have problems with difficult with the words, with speaking, and also they have problems with misplacing of items. So they could forget where they are located, or they could forget or don't recognize their relatives, their parent, their members of their family. Could see here difficulty completing familiar tasks, something which she or he do previously very easily. Trouble with images and spaces. Okay, let us go on. This is also cartoons which describe the Alzheimer's disease. So in one picture we see two old people who have a conversation, and one of them say, "I hate it when I walk in a room and forget why I went in there, especially when it is a bathroom." So they always forgot about something. Why this has happened? Because synapses, the connection between the neurons is destroyed. So it's difficult to do some very easy thing which they do previously, and it's sometimes, and that is why they will forget what they are going to do, because this is the new kind of synapses, or new activation of the synapses should be happen, but it will not happen because synapses in the central nervous system will be destroyed. Or another cartoons which describe that my memory is pretty good. Ask me who won the Stanley Cup in 200 BC. 2000, I'm sorry, BC. So the person, the man, easily remember what happened years ago. But now what happened with him, or where he is located, or where he went, he is going, he could forget. This is due to the Alzheimer's disease, due to the appearing near these neurons, network of neurons, collapse of protein amyloid beta, which are not fully destroyed by microglia. So in this case, we have dysfunction of microglia. Another kind of glia cell which is present in the central nervous system is oligodendrocyte. Oligodendrocytes are responsible for maintaining and generation of myelin sheets that surround the axons. So the main function of this myelin is isolation of the nerve fibers. And also, when you studied previously, due to this myelin, the speed of conduction is the conduction in the nerve system have saltatory way, and the speed of conduction is very quickly. When this myelin will be destroyed, the nerve fibers, and especially nerve fibers, axons will be damaged, and the nerve cells will lose their function. In case when we have destroying of the myelin, you could see here, when the myelin will be destroyed, we will receive the disease which is called multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is mainly autoimmune disease, which appear at the year from 20 to 40 years. This happened because antibodies will destroy this myelin, and the nerve impulses will not properly conduct through the nerve fibers from one neuron to another neuron. That is why person will have such problems like problem with vision, could be double vision, or sometimes she or he will lost vision in one eye. Then it's problem with movement. It could be shaking of hands or shaking of legs, muscle weakness. This less or more symptoms which is common for this kind of disease. So, but what is interesting, when we talk about the myelin and compare it in central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, the differences is that in the central nervous system, myelin is built by oligodendrocyte, and oligodendrocyte do not have ability to regenerate properly. In comparison with the Schwann cell, which is present in peripheral nervous system, and in the peripheral nervous system, it will make this myelin. Moreover, when we have the damage of myelin in the peripheral nervous system, Schwann cells could regenerate, not very quickly, but nevertheless, such kind of sensation like tactile sensation, pain, or temperature will return. Maybe in a year, maybe in 6 months, but the perception ability to detect the stimuli will return back in comparison with the myelin, which is present in central nervous system, which could not regenerate. Now let us go and talk about another glial cells in central nervous system. It's astrocyte. Astrocytes create blood-brain barrier. Also, it's responsible for physical and metabolic support for neurons. It means responsible for support of energy, support of nutrition. It's defense against the oxidative stress, and it's responsible for synapses formation and function of them. So this is the main function of the astrocytes. Astrocytes make us smart, yes, and this is right, because if you look on the last function of them, that they're responsible for formation of the synapses, and we know that formation of new network of the neurons, formation of the new synapses, it means that person try to learn something, try to learn some kind of skill, or to remember some kind of knowledge. This all situation or remembering of information or some kind of skill happens due to the appearing of new synapses. And because new synapses means new connection between neurons. That is why if we try to learn, if we try to study, we will have a lot of astrocytes in our central nervous system, and we will become smarter and more intelligent. Epidermal cells. Epidermal cells, they're responsible for produce this cerebrospinal fluid and circulate it by wafting of glial cells. They will surround the cerebrospinal channel. Now let us go on and discuss about the processes which happen in the central nervous system. The central nervous system always will happen two types of processes: is excitation and inhibition. this process always will go together. Sometimes in central nervous system will be more excitation happens, and sometimes inhibitory processes. So we are going to talk about excitation and inhibition together. It means that in case of the excitatory synapses will produce excitatory postsynaptic potential on the postsynaptic membrane by opening the sodium ion channels through the excitatory neurotransmitters, and inhibitory synapses are going to produce inhibitory postsynaptic potential on the postsynaptic membrane through the inhibitory neurotransmitters like GABA, which are going to open the chlorine ion channels. First of all, let us stop on the inhibitory processes in central nervous system. So, central inhibition could be, first of all, let us identify what is inhibition. It is a special nerve process that is caused excitation and externally manifested by the inhibition of other excitation. The result of it will be inhibitory postsynaptic potential, which is capable for summation, but unlike to the excitatory postsynaptic potential, is not transformed to the action potential. Central inhibitory we could classify by localization, could be presynaptic or postsynaptic. By the change of the membrane potential, could be hyperpolarization or depolarization, or by the structure of the inhibitory neuronal chain, it could be reciprocal, feedback, and lateral. First of all, let us discuss about the localization. So we could divide it on the presynaptic inhibition and postsynaptic inhibition. When we talk about the presynaptic inhibition, it means that we require some kind of inhibitory neuron which is going to inhibit presynaptic terminal, and as a result it will not release neurotransmitter. So you could see here we have excitatory neuron which will spread through the nerve fibers, will spread and excitation, but another neuron, inhibitory neuron, will release inhibitory neurotransmitter, for instance GABA, which will affect on the presynaptic axon terminal. As a result, calcium will not enter the presynaptic terminal, it will not bind to the vesicles, and vesicles will not release neurotransmitter, which further will not affect on the postsynaptic membrane. So here we will not receive response in comparison with two other cases. In case when we talk about the postsynaptic inhibition, all target cells of the postsynaptic neuron are inhibited equally. So we have, in this situation, we have the neuron, one excitatory and one inhibitory presynaptic neuron fire. Yes, they will modify signal in postsynaptic neuron below the threshold. And as a result, we won't receive any kind of reaction. Mostly it means that some kind we have inhibitory neuron which will directly release inhibitory neurotransmitter like GABA, which connect to the postsynaptic membrane and produce open chlorine ion channels. Chlorine will enter the postsynaptic membrane and release inhibitory postsynaptic potential. As a result, the postsynaptic neuron will not produce any kind of excitation. So you see, we won't receive any kind of response. But nevertheless, let us return to the presynaptic inhibition. Before we are going to talk about the presynaptic inhibition, I want to stop that, return back about what we talked, that in central nervous system we have always process inhibition and excitation. These two processes always go together. So as we have presynaptic inhibition, we also could have a presynaptic facilitation. Presynaptic facilitation, in other words, we could name it like presynaptic excitatory process. Yes. So in this picture, you could see that we have the postsynaptic neuron. Yes, and in which we could or receive effect or we couldn't receive effect. It depends on what kind of process we have in the presynaptic, in this yellow presynaptic neuron. So if this green neuron will inhibit, the yellow one neuron, will receive presynaptic inhibition. Another situation is when this green neuron will release excitatory neurotransmitter, which will lead to increase or enhance function of the yellow one, and as a result, we are going to receive excitatory effect on the postsynaptic membrane. So let us look in a detail. In case of the presynaptic inhibition, we talked about it now several minutes ago, that we have the presynaptic axon, it's yellow one, we have inhibitory neuron, it's green one, and we have postsynaptic membrane. So if inhibitory neuron will release GABA, GABA will inactivate calcium channel. Calcium will not, less calcium will enter the presynaptic terminal. So less neurotransmitter will release, and as a result, we will receive reduced effect on the postsynaptic membrane. Mostly, and as we know that the inhibitory postsynaptic potential, it is kind of local response. So generally, the membrane will not be, this local response will be very small, even it will not appear. In case when we talk about the presynaptic facilitation, we have another situation when green neuron is going to release neurotransmitter serotonin. Serotonin has excitatory effect. Serotonin will affect on the presynaptic axon terminal. As a result, it will activate calcium channel. More calcium will enter the presynaptic terminal. More calcium will bind with the vesicles, and as a result, more neurotransmitter will release. So logically, we will receive increased effect on the postsynaptic membrane. We are going to receive increased effect of excitatory postsynaptic potential. So it will be some kind of presynaptic facilitation. Presynaptic facilitation, this mechanism is mainly good in case when in the nervous system are going such processes like remembering something or learning some kind of new skills. That is why we need to facilitate to increase excitatory postsynaptic potential. Presynaptic inhibition, one more example, we talk about the presynaptic inhibition in case when we have the GABA neurotransmitter. But one more example of the presynaptic inhibition, it is a part of the antinociceptive system, which release such neurotransmitters like enkephalin or endorphin. This enkephalin or endorphin will affect on the presynaptic terminal, and this presynaptic terminal will inhibit it. As a result, calcium will not enter to the presynaptic terminal. The same situation, it will not bind to these vesicles, and vesicles will not release substance P. We know that the substance P is a neurotransmitter which is responsible for transmission of pain sensation. So enkephalin are going to block releasing of substance P, and as a result, the person will not feel pain, or the person will feel not sharp pain. I mean very relieved, pain sensation will be reduced. Okay. What type of central inhibition we could name? We know it is a recurrent inhibition, reciprocal inhibition, lateral inhibition. When we talk about the recurrent inhibition, we have that the axon, the collateral of the excitatory neuron will excitate the inhibitory neuron, which further is going to inhibit the same neuron. So you see, we have some kind of circle. This inhibitory neuron will be located in the spinal cord, and it is named the Renshaw cell. This type of inhibition is very common in case of the when we talk about the movement. To some extent, it's tried to coordinate the movement. So the afferent neuron, motor neuron, will excitate and transport the signal to the skeletal muscles. And as a result, the collateral axon of this afferent neuron will excitate inhibitory neuron. The Renshaw cell, which is a Renshaw cell. Renshaw cell is going to inhibit this excitatory motor neuron. Why? In this situation, to maintain this inhibition is very important to make the movement coordinated. not only to spread excitation, but also to some extent to relieve this excitation in case in this situation muscles will contract in a sequent way and the movement will be coordinated. Reciprocal inhibition happens when one neuron is going to excitate inhibitory neuron, which further is going to inhibit the third neuron. So excitation of one neuron will spread to excitation of inhibitory neuron or second neuron, but this inhibitory neuron is going to inhibit the third neuron. Reciprocal inhibition mainly will happen in case for coordinative of muscle contraction, flexors and extensors. We are going to see it later. And lateral inhibitions happen when one neuron is going to inhibit it's going to excitate neighborhood neurons, which further is going to inhibit neighborhood neurons. You see, so an inhibitory interneuron is going to inhibit neurons which are located near it. But nevertheless, let us return back to the reciprocal inhibition. It's very important. It's very to know about it. Reciprocal inhibition happens in case for coordinate movement of or contraction. It's better to say of muscles extensors and flexors. So when muscle flexors are going to contract, in our case it's quadriceps. So this afferent neuron, we have, let us start from this one. So afferent information from the muscle spindles will send to the spinal cord. This afferent information, first of all, will excitate the efferent neuron, which goes to the quadriceps, and it will contract, but also the sensory information will contract with the interneuron. And this interneuron is going to inhibit the motor neuron, which innervate the extensor muscles. So flexors will be excited, and as a result they will contract, and extensor muscles, they will inhibit it. In this case, and as a result, the person could move the leg. This is an example of reciprocal inhibition. Also, let us discuss that in the nerve centers and the central nervous system, not only spread the inhibitory processes and inhibitory networks of connection with the neurons, but also we have another kind of connection between neurons, which is called neuronal circuits. The main common neural circuits, it is divergence, convergence, reverberating, and parallel after discharge circuit. Divergence means when one neuron could send information and excitate a lot of other neurons. Convergence means when a lot of neurons could excitate one neuron. Reverberating means mostly means that one neuron will excitate another one, and this excitation will spread in the circle in this situation. And this is a reverberating circle is very common for such situation like for short-term memory. And the last one, it is parallel after discharge circuit, when the presynaptic neuron will excitate the postsynaptic membrane and even when in the presynaptic neuron excitation will be stopped, nevertheless in the parallel after discharge movement this excitation will be spread. Now let us go on all of these processes as inhibition, as connection between neurons, divergence, convergence happen in the nerve centers. What is a nerve centers in case of the physiology? It is a set of the interconnected neurons which are responsible for regulation of the certain physiological function. Nerve center is not only means should be located in one specific area. These neurons of the nerve center could be located in different parts of the central nervous system of the cerebral cortex, but they will connect together in a different variant of convergence or divergence and produce their physiological effect. The main properties of the nerve center is the tone. It means high tone, it means high activity of the nerve center and regulation of the function. High tendency to fatigue, which happen due to the in the nerve center. We know that the neurons should connect to each other. Neurons connect to each other through their synapses. That is why for synapses we discussed previously that it has also such ability like fatigue, which happen due to the lack of the energy or which happen due to the lack of the neurotransmitter after excitation. That is why it also could have a high tendency to fatigue due to the lack of neurotransmitter or energy after high excitation processes. And also nerve centers, they are very high sensitive to the hypoxia. It means the cerebral cortex could not live for a long, could not be still alive for a long period of time without oxygen, supply of oxygen. It could, for instance, spinal cord could stay alive without oxygen about 15 minutes, and cerebral cortex around 5 minutes, and that's it. So let us go on. What is a reflex? Reflex is a stereotypic, unconscious, voluntary response to the stimuli. Reflex consists of some specific structures, which we are going to discuss. So reflex arc consists of the receptor, which is present on the skin. Information from the receptor will be sent through the sensory neuron to the posterior horns of the spinal cord, where it will connect to the interneuron. And further information will be spread through the anterior horns where located the motor neuron to the effector organ. In our case, effector organ could be or smooth muscles, or skeletal muscles, or secretory cell. So the 5 main stages of the reflex arc. It is receptor, sensory neuron, interneuron. Sometimes it could be missed interneuron, motor neuron, and effector organ. How we can classify? Here is one more example of concept of reflex cycle. Information could be spread, so we have the receptors which will be detect some kind of stimuli. In our case, it will be pain sensation. Pain sensation will be spread through the sensory neuron to the spinal cord, where it will bind to the interneuron. From the interneuron, information will be first of all spread up to the higher part of the central nervous system, and also after that information, interneuron connect with the with the motor neuron, which will send information to the effector organs. In our case, it is the muscles. How we can classify neurons? Depending on the number of the synapses, it could be monosynaptic or polysynaptic reflexes. So example of the monosynaptic reflexes, it is the tandem reflex, knee-jerk reflex. It means when the sensory neuron will bind to the motor neurons without connection with the higher centers of the central nervous system. I mean with the cerebral cortex. Depending on the type of effector organ, could be motor reflexes, could be autonomic reflexes. Then the effectors are glands, blood vessels, smooth muscles of internal organs. By type of receptors, could be exteroreceptor reflexes when receptors located in the skin, interoreceptor reflexes when receptors are located inside of the internal organs, or proprioceptive reflexes when the receptors are located in tendons, ligaments, muscle spindles. Depending on the mechanism of formation, they could be unconditional and conditional. Conditional requires it will appear during the life, and they are more complicated. They require regulation of the central nervous system. So, example of the reflexes could be reflex of Babinski, which is normal for infants and which is pathological for adults. When you, in this reflex, you could say we have an E and we have the hammer, and when you touch by the hammer the foot, not me, foot, to the tip, you will receive the movement of the fingers. In this situation, this reaction could happen in infant, and it will be the normal, and in adult it will give information that some kind of damage of the central nervous system. What coordination principles of the reflex activity of the nervous activity we know? It's the principles of the dominance. It means that principles of dominance means when some part of the central nervous system will be excited by the stimuli, and as a result they will subordinate other parts of the nerve centers. Principles of the common final pathway. Then principles of the reflex relief, when we have that 2 weak stimuli will not produce reaction if they will act separately, but when they will act together simultaneously at the same time, they could produce a reflex reaction. Principle of reflex occlusion means when too strong stimuli will produce a weak reaction, vice versa situation. The principles of feedback means that the reaction of the stimuli always will be coordinated. For instance, the reflex of the movement, yes, the contraction of the muscles. Muscle will contract, but nevertheless, information from the ligament, from the tendons, from the muscle spindles will return back to the central nervous system. In this case, central nervous system will coordinate the movement. And principle of reciprocal interaction of the reflexes. It means that some neurons are going to be excited and some neurons are going to be inhibited. Now let us go to the sensory part of the nerve system. Mostly I'm going to talk about these senses. So, how we can classify senses? We could classify them in the general sensation and special sensation. We know that the special sensation requires specific organ, and example of the special sense would be smell, taste, sight, hearing, and balance. General sensation, most will be receptors will be located in the skin, in the muscle, so visceral organs, and as a result we are going to divide them. If receptors are located in the skin, muscle, or joints, it will be somatic sense. What kind of sensation it will be? It will be touch, pressure, proprioception, temperature, and pain sensation. And if receptors will be located in the internal organs, this kind of sense will be called visceral. And visceral sense will be divided on the pain and pressure. We transmit information about pain and pressure. Analyzer is a morphologic basis of all senses. It consists of the receptor, it consists of the nerves, which is apparent nerves, which were responsible to transmit information to the central nervous system. So, receptor, conductive part, and the cortex representation. So, receptors are responsible to detect the stimuli and convert it to the sensory sensory code, which is going to be spread along through the nerve fibers. Connective pathway is a neuronal chain connecting receptors with the brain. And the cortex representation, it is the brain cortex area, which is responsible for integration and producing of conscious perception. How we can classify receptor? So receptor could be or a sensory nerve ending, or it could be some kind of specialized cell which will bind with the dendrites of the afferent neuron. We could classify receptors according to the localization. It could be extrareceptors, interoreceptors, or proprioceptors. Depending on the mechanism of excitation, it could be primary sensitivity, the nerve example of primary sensitive is the nerve endings, which will detect the information from the stimuli and produces action potential. And secondary sensitive, when we have specific cell which will first of all excitate and then connect with the dendrites of the sensory neuron, and in this way will spread information about the stimuli. Depending on modality, we have mechanoreceptors which will respond to the mechanical stimuli, chemoreceptors which will respond on the chemical stimuli such like odor, photoreceptors which will respond from the light, thermoreceptors, osmoreceptors, nociceptors, or pain receptors. How mechanism of transduction in a primary or secondary sensitive receptor? So, in case when I have the primary sensitive receptors, we know that we have some kind of stimuli. This stimuli will act on the membrane. As a result, we're responsible to depolarize the membrane. During the depolarization, we know we have opening of the sodium channels. Sodium will enter the cell, and as a result, we will receive depolarization of membrane, and in this way, action potential will be spread. In case when we have these secondary sensitive receptors, we have the stimuli will act on this separate cell, which will send the package of stimuli which are going to summate. We have temporal or spatial summation on the nerve ending of the afferent neuron, and only due to this summation, and we know it's a local response. Due to this local response, will open. Due to the summation of these signals, we will receive the depolarization of the membrane of afferent neuron, during which sodium channel will also enter the cell, and information will be spread further to the higher level of the nerve centers. We have two types of summation. It could be temporal summation and spatial summation. In the case of the spatial summation, we mean that at the same time, a lot of two or more stimuli will act on the membrane, and the temporal summation, it means when simultaneously, one by one, stimuli will act on the postsynaptic membrane. Okay, receptors of general sensation. They could be nerve endings. Mainly the example of this, it will be transmission of the pain. But also mostly another, when we talk about the touch, pressure, vibration, this type of sensation will be transmitted by the specific cells. Example of this specific cells, it is the Merkel disc, which is responsible for transmission of the light touch. Meissner corpus, which is responsible for transmission decrementive touch. Then Ruffini corpus, which is responsible for transmission of the deep touch, deep sensation, and the Pacini corpus, which is responsible for transmission such kind of sensation like vibration. Then pressure, vibration, pressure, and deep vibration and pressure. Sorry. Okay. Now let us go on. Now all this information about spinothalamic tract is present here. Is a track which will be responsible to transmit information about pain and temperature sensation. So receptors on the skin will detect pain and temperature sensation. This information will be spread by the sensory neuron. Sensory neuron. The first neuron, the body of the first neuron is located on the dorsal roots of the spinal cord. Then, which is the nerve fibers of the sensory neuron will enter the spinal cord, and the second neuron will be located in the posterior horns of the spinal cord. Then it's from the one side, from the right side. From the left side, we have the same kind of the spinothalamic tract, which also will enter the spinal cord on the level of the dorsal horns of the spinal cord. But what is interesting that in 1-2 segments higher, the spinothalamic tract will cross. So the right part, information from the right part of the body will now transmitted on the left part of the spinal cord, and information about the left part of the body, pain, temperature, sensation, will be transmitted on the right part of the spinal cord. The third neuron will be located in the thalamus, from where information will be spread up to the central or to the cerebral cortex. Why it's important to know about this crossing effect? If there will be damage of the spinal cord, damage of the half of the spinal cord, for instance, the left part of the spinal cord, and we know that the spinothalamic tract is in 1-2 segments high is going to cross. So the person is going, let us discuss it, it will be the level of, it will be level L3 or L4, okay? So on the level L3, L4, information about pain and temperature sensation from the legs will be crossed. So information from the right, it's the right part, and it's here is left part. So information about pain, temperature, sensation from the right leg now will be spread by spinothalamic tract on the left side of spinal cord. And information from the left leg will be spread on the right side of spinal cord. So when we have the damage, some spinal cord on the level of L3, L4, okay, the person is going to lose pain and temperature sensation on the right leg. So in the right leg, person will not feel pain and temperature sensation, but the area of damage will be located on the half of the left part of spinal cord. Why? Because due to this crossing effect of the spinothalamic tract. Then dorsal column system is responsible for transmission of such sensations like touch and vibration from the proprioceptors, which are located in the proprioceptors detect vibration from the vibration, and they are detected in and they are located in ligaments, muscle spindles, and tendons. The same information will be spread through the afferent neuron. The body of the afferent neuron will be located in the dorsal root ganglion of spinal cord. Then information will be transmitted to the posterior horns of spinal cord. And information from the right part of the body will transmitted on the right part of the spinal cord, and information from the left part of body will transmit it on the left side of spinal cord. It means that in dorsal column system does not cross on the level of the spinal cord. Dorsal column system has two fasciculus, fasciculus cuneatus and fasciculus gracilis. Fasciculus cuneatus will transmit information from the upper part of the body and trunk, and fasciculus gracilis, which is located more medial, will transmit information from the lower part of the body. The crossing effect will happen on the level of the medulla oblongata, where will be located the second neuron. So, In this level, information from the dorsal column system from the right part now will go to the left one side of the medulla oblongata and vice versa. The third neuron, the same situation, will be located in the thalamus. And further information will be transmitted to the cerebral cortex, mainly to the postcentral gyrus. So when we have the damage of the spinal cord, of the half of the spinal cord, for instance, on the right side, the person is going to lose touch and vibration sensation on the right leg, for instance, and we will know that the level of the damage will be located on the L1 or L2 because it will be leg, and on the right side, not on the opposite side, on the right side, because this track, dorsal column system, does not cross on the level of the spinal cord. The cross effect is going to happen on the level of the medulla oblongata. Now, let us talk about the thalamus. As you maybe remembered, we discussed that as spinothalamic tract, as dorsal column system, the third neuron is located on the thalamus. So we could say that the thalamus is that collective center of the whole sensory information. So in this picture, I want to show you that the sensory input goes through the thalamus firstly, and then to the cerebral cortex, to the postcentral gyrus. So sensory input, Hui is here. Welcome to the brain. So thalamus is like the gates which opens and send information to the cerebral cortex. But first of all, they should go through it. Nevertheless, thalamus not only take part in transmission of the sensory information. Thalamus have the motor nuclei, which will be the part of the extrapyramidal system. They will connect with the basal ganglia and will take part for control of the movement contraction, for control of the muscle, for control of the muscle contraction. They're responsible for coordinative of movement, and also they're responsible for learning of some kind of movement skills. Also, what is interesting, thalamus have connection limbic nuclei. So it will bind with the limbic system and is responsible for production some kind of emotions like fear, anger, and also such kind of emotions like motivation. So in this slide presented the sensory nuclei of the thalamus, which receive input from the spinothalamic tract, from the optic tract, from the trigeminothalamic tract, from the inferior colliculi. It means so they receive information from the whole senses, from the hearing, from eyes, from balance, from the skin, but except the smell. The odor does not, information of the odor does not spread through the thalamus. And we have also motor nuclei, which connect with the basal ganglia and responsible for coordination of movements. They're responsible for planning of movement, take part in the planning of movement and the initiation. And some of the nuclei, like anterior nuclei, they connect with the limbic system and responsible for such kind of emotions like memory, storage, for anger, angry, for fear, and for such kind of emotions like motivation. Further, the information from the thalamus will be spread up to the cerebral cortex. In the cerebral cortex, we are going to have the postcentral gyrus. I'm sorry. Yes, postcentral gyrus, which is another name. It is the primary somatosensory cortex, which will detect the whole information from the sensation. Also, we have the sensory associative area in the parietal lobe. In the occipital lobe, we have the vision associative area. In the temporal lobe, we are going to have the auditory cortex. In the prefrontal area, it will be associative cortex. In a gustatory cortex, it will be the responsible for the taste, and olfactory cortex, it will be responsible for the smell. Primary somatic sensory cortex, or POS, which is present in the postcentral gyrus, is responsible for detecting the general sensation from the whole body. But you could see, and it will be represented, the whole body will be represented in this postcentral gyrus by these sensory homunculus. The body, the parts of our body will be the general sensation of part of our body will be presented here. You could see that the biggest representation of the general sensation is given for the tongue, for the hand, for hand, and for lips, for movement, for your for movement of the lips for speaking. Okay. Now let us go on to the pain. Type of pain receptors. What kind of pain receptors we know? It could be mechanical receptors, which will react on mechanical damages, thermoreceptors, which will respond to the temperature, and polymodal receptors, which respond for all type of stimuli which destroy the tissue. The information from these receptors will be spread by the nerve fibers. Mostly the sharp pain will be spread, but by type A delta nerve fibers, and the dull pain will be spread by the type C nerve fibers, which are unmyelinated. Rapid pain, appearing with rapid pain, is enhanced by the prostaglandins, which will secreted by the damaged tissue. And in case when we talk about the dull pain, it will be enhanced by the bradykinin, which additionally stimulates the inflammatory reaction on the damaged tissue. Mostly the pain sensation will be spread to the here is synaptic mechanism of the pain transmission. So we have a pain stimuli, which will connect with the nerve endings of the afferent neuron. Information will be spread to the spinal cord, and the afferent neuron is going to release the neurotransmitter substance P. Substance P is mainly responsible for production of pain sensation, which further will be transmitted to the higher level of central nervous system. It is to the medulla oblongata, it is reticular formation, and also to the postcentral gyrus. Gate control of the series of antinociceptive system. So mainly when we have pain sensation in the spinal cord, we have inhibitory neuron, which is going to release the neurotransmitters, enkephalins and endorphins. The enkephalins and endorphins will block releasing of substance P, and as a result, the pain transmission will stop, or the transmission of pain sensation will reduce. So it means that the person will not feel such huge pain as it should be before inhibition of the transmission of substance P. What kind of pain we have? We have the referred pain, pain from the visceral organs. We know that in the postcentral gyrus, we don't have representation of the visceral organs, but nevertheless, the information from pain sensation from them will be transmitted by the type C unmyelinated nerve fibers. How is going to be transmitted? So the sensory nerve fibers together will enter the paravertebral ganglion, and further they will connect with the afferent nerve fibers of the sensory neuron in the dorsal roots of the ganglion, and together they are going to enter the spinal cord and the dorsal horns. As a result, the representation will be on the skin. For understanding what organs have pain sensation, we should know the zone of the current head. For instance, the stomach of the pain will be presented on the epigastric area. The pain of the pancreas will be presented also near the epigastric area on the left side of the abdominal cavity. The pain from the gallliver and the gallbladder will be represented on the right part of the abdominal cavity, and also it will spread, irritate to the shoulder, for instance. So here you have the zones to which will irritate pain from the visceral organs. How we can classify analgesia? Analgesia, it is release. It is type of so in our body we have anti-nociceptive system. It is natural, which is responsible to relieve pain. Analgesia is some kind of external type of relieving of pain. Type of analgesia could be physical, pharmacological, using such kind of drugs, neurosurgical, or psychophysiological. Physical analgesia will include, it could be massage, warming up or cooling. It could be electroanalgesia or immobilization. Thank you for your attention.